Thank you for being here. Today is February the 27th, 2013. This is the Social Justice Institute Oral History Project. And we are here today with Pastor Shawn Braxton.
Mm-hmm.
I am very delighted that you've agreed to share this interview with us.
Oh, thank you.
And this is such a special project for the city of East Cleveland, and we're reaching out to people to just hear about the people that live here that make the city a breathing, loving place that we all consider it to be. So if you could just start out telling us a little bit about your family history and about yourself.
Okay, I grew up in the Glenville area over on 124th and St. Clair. Had the great fortune of going to Collinwood High School. Here in East Cleveland was considered a rival. So my earliest memories of East Cleveland was not fond memories. So it was being the rival to our beloved Collinwood. But in growing up in the Glenville area, I grew up doing busing. So rather than going to the neighborhood school, we were bused to schools at that time that were more or predominantly white communities. So rather than going to Iowa Maple, which was right around the corner from the house, we had to go to O.H. Perry and then to Margaret Spellacy and then on to Collinwood. So I grew up during that time when there was the racial tension of having those black kids bust into the neighborhood. So we were called names. We were chased home, those kids that had to walk, and to the point where the police would actually sit in their car and watch the black kids be beat. And when they would fight back, that's when the police would intervene. So it was during one of those very trying times in Cleveland history, but had the great fortune of having a very solid family structure. My mom was a single mom. However, my brother and I lived with my mom in our grandparents' house. So that's where we got the structure. And my grandfather was a bishop in the Apostolic Church. So had the great experience of having those solid Christian values, but growing up in Cleveland, but having the southern feel within the household because they were truly from down south living in the city.
Can you tell me your birth date so we can get a time frame and the year you graduated from college?
I was born in November 1968.
Mm-hmm.
It was right towards the end of some of the civil rights efforts, going into the Vietnam period of folks really beginning to say enough is enough as related to the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Flower Children era, where it was be free and live freely. So I grew up in that era when marijuana was pervasive in our community. And it was nothing to see people, both in the family and in the street, using drugs, and especially the drug of that choice, which was marijuana, or drinking alcohol.
So, what year did you graduate from high school?
1987.
1987.
Mm.
So, when you were bused into Collinwood, what percentage of blacks would you say lived there?
In the community, it was probably very few blacks living in the community because 152nd and going west, that was the African American community. 152nd going east, that was predominantly white Italian at the time. That was before they truly took the flight and leaving the community. We had not fully integrated that community yet.
You know, skipping down, we entered into this next question that we have down a little bit further. Have you ever experienced racism or inequality? So I think with your interview, we're jumping right into that.
Yeah.
How did you feel killed during that period, and you know.
Well, we were prepared in my household because my grandfather was from Alabama and my grandmother was from West Virginia. So we had heard all of the stories about the civil rights movement. And the blessing was my grandfather's brother is Angelo Herndon. And Angelo Herndon was one of the folks that was instrumental in starting some of the worker rights movements. He was labeled a communist. And so during my grandfather's early years and formative years, he would have to deal with the Ku Klux Klan coming to the house, looking for his brother Angelo, and also the FBI, because he was one of those individuals that was originally charged with insurrection back in Alabama. So he was actually represented by I'm trying to remember the Tuskegee Airman that was a lawyer, the same gentleman that represented the Scottsboro Boys. Angelo was actually charged with insurrection and brought to federal court and spent time in jail, but he was actually freed by the representation of the NAACP and those lawyers that got him off. So had a rich history and understanding the movement and the struggle of our people. My grandfather's father had died when he was 5 years old. So they had to go to work. So they went to the coal mines when they were 13 and 14. He and Angelo and the rest of their brothers had to go work when they were very young. So we had the pleasure of being able to sit at our grandfather's feet and hear those stories and pick up the wealth of knowledge that he had. But then one of the turning points in my life, especially with knowing that I had a role to play in the whole social justice movement, was, you really don't truly understand the stories until you actually have it come to you in a different way. So my grandfather, the stories, they meant a lot, and I understood that racism exists from my experience and from my vantage point of being a student in Margaret Spellacy and at Collinwood High School and seeing the racism that went on there. But when I went away to college, I went to Central State University, and I was sitting in my room one day reading a book called Black Protest Thought and turned to a chapter on Uncle Angelo. And he talked about he and my grandfather going to the mines in Kentucky when they were 13 and 14 years of age, and how he began to fight for worker rights and looked at the fact that he saw that they pitted nationalities against each other. When the Italians weren't doing what the employer might have liked, they would bring in the Irish, and then they would form a pact, the Irish and the Italians, and then they would bring in the blacks, and then both races would get, or ethnicities would get mad at the blacks. So he said, he began to see the patterns, and he talked about that. But I just laid in my bed that day and cried because by that time my grandfather was now deceased, and knowing that those stories that he shared with me were very real, but also had an opportunity to see the fact my uncle Angelo was good friends with Langston Hughes. So there was a story about my grandfather's brother Milton. He was in the army, and he was killed in northern Africa. And Langston Hughes actually brought word back when he was over in Europe to Angelo that Milton had been killed.
Wow. So do you remember meeting Langston Hughes when you were a child?
No, never. I mean, my grandfather was.
This was way, yeah.
Yeah, this.
I'm putting the time frame
Yeah, my
together.
grandfather was well into his 70s. Well into his late 60s, 70s, through those teenage years and those formative years. He actually died the year after I graduated from high school.
Yeah.
So it was truly a blessing to be able to share that time with him. And
what was the most indelible story he shared with you about those times that really first thing that comes to your mind about living in Alabama?
Well, the fact of, and it wasn't necessarily Alabama. He talked about him being a miner, and he had to go work in the coal mines, and he said that there would only be about 3 or 4 feet of space in the areas that they had to mine in. And I would be like, "There's my grandfather was I'm a guy that weighs 240 pounds. My grandfather was big hands, big bone guy, had to weigh about 250 pounds, and I saw this huge guy, and I'm imagining him being down in a hole of about 3 or 4 feet, laying on his stomach or on his back with a pick, chipping away at coal. It was unimaginable. So it was like I'm like, wow, that's impossible. But he said that that's the way that he made a living and took care of his family in the hills of West Virginia. And once again, until you see it for yourself, it's just hard to believe that, like, yeah, right, because I'm coming from a vantage point. I'm like, I have an opportunity to go to school. I can work in an environment in which it is not as restrictive as working in a mine. And it just seemed unreal and unbelievable. But the fact that he was also a boxer and that he would make extra money by boxing. And one day when he found the Lord, he gave it all up. And he took the venture to move to Cleveland once they closed down the mine that he was working in, and came here. And they eventually moved down into the Central Projects area until he could get enough money to buy his family a house.
Wow. Where did he work when he moved
He
to
moved into construction. So he was on one of the construction projects that actually built the Lorraine Bridge.
No.
The Lorraine's, the bridge, that Lorraine Carnegie Bridge. And to just know that you are history, and to know that your family has contributed so much to what we now see, it actually means a lot. But once again, stuff doesn't hit home until you actually see it for yourself. My grandmother just celebrated her 85th birthday this past summer in July, and we went back down to West Virginia. And we actually had an opportunity to go into a mine, and everything that he said about the 3 or 4 feet of space was so true, and the gases that were in the mines, and the mine rats that they had. The reason that they had 10 lunch boxes was because the rats would tear into paper bags if they kept their lunches in paper bags. So they actually had a tin lunch pail with water in the bottom of it, and that's what they would have to drink, and they would work 12 to 16 hours. And the part that just like really blew my mind is they worked for what is called script. And that money, or script, was a form of money that they could only use in the mining stores. And they wouldn't pay them with real money. They'd pay them with company script.
Wow.
So to know that from the hills of Alabama to the mines and the hills of West Virginia to Cleveland, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants.
Truly you are. How did he prepare you for going to the integrated schools? What would have been the conversation he would have with you to help you adjust?
Well, just really telling me the nature of individuals that are in power and how they kind of utilize that authority. My grandfather would actually say, you can't trust certain people as far as you could throw them. And that would be that mantra that I would kind of live by. Like, some folks you can't trust as far as you could throw them. And it was almost like he prepared us to recognize those signs. And in fact, I didn't have to, but when I would turn 16, I went and worked in a factory, like a foundry, and got to see firsthand those folks that you couldn't trust as far as you could throw them. And that's one of the reasons that inspired me to go to college, because I worked in a place where the whites were promoted to supervisory positions, but most of the blacks were in labor positions. And you could just see death on some of the African Americans' face, that they would die in those positions. And yes, it was good money. I mean, I was a 16-year-old making $7.25 an hour, working 6 days a week. But at the end of the day, I realized that the lead that was in the atmosphere, if that didn't kill me or render me to lose cognition or to have blood poisoning, it would have been, the fact that I was lifting 50,000 pounds a day.
So, for the questions of have you experienced inequality, there would definitely be
Possibly, maybe.
and have you experienced racism? When you were bused in, so at the high school you weren't bused, but elementary school.
We had to walk to Collinwood,
Yeah.
but to both O.H. Perry and to Spellacy, we were bused in. O.H. Perry, I didn't really experience, or I have no recollection of the racism, simply because I was in more of the honors program. So these were all of the smart kids that were going there at the time. They didn't bus us there just because of the race aspects of things. They bused us there more so because I was an honor student. But when we went to Spellacy, that's truly when the busing hit full throttle for me. And that's where I got to experience the chasing home, hearing the stories of black kids getting beat, whether it were the kids coming from the Euclid Park area or the kids that were staying in the East Clark area. Those kids, because many of them had to walk to school, they were put at risk for being jumped. I stayed more than 2 miles away, so I had the benefit of being able to get on a bus to come to school and get on a bus to go back home. But due to the fact that if you were not 1 mile or 1.5 mile or 2 mile radius away from the school, those kids had to walk.
Called names?
Oh yeah.
It
It was nothing to be called the N-word and told to get out of their neighborhood, whether it was older folks or even some of the younger folks, calling you out of your name.
Did you have fear?
Well, I think when you're in your teenage years, you're such a rebel, especially being a young African American male, that you grew up in a neighborhood that was already challenged with violence. You really don't know what fear is, and if you are scared, you kind of get that stupid fear, like, oh man, this is stupid, and you kind of say, blow it off, and just realize that people are who they are. We call the police officer that was assigned to that area, we called him Super Cop, because of the way that he treated us, and you just knew that he was racist.
How was it in the actual classroom?
The classroom experience, and once again, this is coming from someone that was in the honors program,
Right.
So I was a good black kid.
Because those encounters you have are typically going to and from school, but when you actually sat down in the classroom, did you experience any preferential treatment from your?
No, I mean, once again, I was a good black kid. So being the kid that, is going to do what he's told to do, turn in his assignments, understands the work, that, in many instances, teachers will treat you differently. It's even when I had an employment opportunity, and this was one of my first jobs after graduating from high school was at the Cleveland Metro Park Zoo. And I hope it's changed, but they would have all of the black people working on the grounds crew, and they would have the white people working in the relational aspects of the zoo. So the white folks got to be cashiers, they got to drive the trains, and things of that nature. So because I had a relative that worked in management at the Cleveland Metro Park Zoo, I got to work with the white folks. So they told me when I worked there that I didn't talk black. And once again, when you're just one person, they're more apt to accept you versus if there would have been maybe 10 of us, it would have been like, why are all these black people in these positions? But most of the folks were college students coming back and had connections with the metro parks where their family members got them connected. And I just happened to be a black person who had a family member that got me connected. So I drove the trains and the bus that went through the park. But the thing is, once again, you got to see the racial aspects because I was like the token black that got to be with the white folks, but all of my other black counterparts, they were working grounds.
So you were fully aware of
Oh yeah.
the difference that they made. So then, did you get pushback from them? Because, you know, it can come from the other side, from our side.
Oh, for sure.
Who does he think he is?
Yeah, and I only hung out with the white kids at the zoo. So, of course, it's like, oh, he thinks that he's arrived, or you're the token black, or you're the Uncle Tom, not truly understanding who Uncle Tom was. Uh,
So how did you handle that?
I'm like a duck. Stuff rolls off of me. I mean, I've been always the one. I grew up on 124th and St. Clair, so I was always different. I wasn't thugged out
in your neighborhood?
in my neighborhood. You know, most of the guys in my neighborhood had experience in going to jail, selling drugs, and even though that was a part that I experienced later on in life, that wasn't. I hung out with guys, but there was a limit for me. Only went so far. I wasn't a fighter. That was other people in my family that did the fighting, and other people on the block that did the fighting. So if stuff went a certain way, I knew who to call. But they respected me enough to be like, Shawn, that ain't how Shawn rolls, and you know.
So
but
they
I was
left you
protected.
alone. You were protected.
Yeah.
So that's good. So you knew your path, and you pretty much you stayed focused. And do you attribute that to your upbringing?
I believe that it was my
Messages
my
from
call. I truly believe that God opened my eyes early along in my life because I kind of resented being the smart kid because everyone else that was in the neighborhood, they had that tough guy persona, and you know, I could hold my own in relation to if something happened or something went down, but I never strived to be the tough guy. I was the quiet, shy, introverted kid that only, if pushed up against the wall, would defend himself.
So who were your friends? Who did you have friends with in the community?
Oh my goodness, we lived on a block that there had to be about 50 guys in the neighborhood. So my childhood best friend, and this is a scary thing, he's now in jail. He was a hitman, and he's now doing life and will never see the streets again. But we were friends from probably like kindergarten to 8th grade, and I saw him beginning to veer off and go that route of doing things that were like, you know, I can't hang with him anymore. But we were friends all the way through 8th grade.
But you knew that. Did your mother have to tell you not to hang with him?
No,
You just knew.
no. I love my mom to death, but my mom was a single parent that was busy, and my mom wasn't the type of parent to ask, "Did you do your homework? Do you have this assignment done?" To be honest, there was something that just clicked inside of me in the 8th grade that said, and I have to say that it was truly God that said, "What you do for the next 4 years is going to affect your future. So you now have to be serious about your education." And it just clicked right after 8th grade because I was a mediocre student in 7th and 8th grade. I was a C student. Mm-hmm. But in high school, something clicked in, and I graduated 10th in the class.
Did you?
Yeah. I was the first male. The other folks that were before me were all females.
Were you the first college graduate in your family?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. In this Cleveland area, I have a cousin that's a cardiologist that's older than me, but she grew up in New York City. So she's a first cousin, and I have another cousin that's a couple years older than me that's an engineer. But on my mom's side, I was the first in this area to graduate. On my dad's side, I was the first, period, to graduate from college. And I've had cousins subsequently to graduate.
So that was really, was that it? How did that make you feel knowing that you were the first?
It didn't. I didn't feel one way or another. My thing is, what made me really happy is when I graduated and was able to hug my grandmother and just tell her I did it for her. Because my grandmother graduated from the eighth. I mean, she made it to the eighth grade and had to leave school. And my grandfather, third grade. Yeah, so to know that a couple generations removed that that their grandson would be a college graduate. And one of the things that just like a couple years ago, my son did a program, an ambassador program through People to People, and went to 7 countries. He was gone for almost a month. And I sat in the audience as they explained where they were going and was weeping because I'm like, from a third grade education to a young man that has a master's, a bachelor's and a master's degree, to his great grandson now traveling the world and going from France to Switzerland to Germany to Italy to Spain and finishing up the trip in Rome and on the grounds of Vatican City from the hills of Alabama. Yeah.
From whence you come.
Yeah.
That speaks volumes for how God can move in.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
What inspired you? Was it your grandfather that inspired you to become a minister, or was it the combination of these experiences that just kind of put you on your own path?
No, I never desired to be a minister. My grandfather inspired me not to be a minister.
Did he?
Yeah, to see how people treated him. The church treated him very badly.
Did he have a church in Cleveland?
He had a church in Cleveland, and it was the affiliation that he was under actually took his church from him. And my grandfather was the kindest man in the world. Didn't take much stuff, but he just had a big heart. And they actually took the church from him because he refused to just follow these rules that didn't make much sense to him. So I vowed that I didn't even want to have anything to do with the church. My calling was truly of God, and that's why I call it a calling, because I never wanted to be a minister, never had a desire to be a minister. And this might sound crazy to some folks, but I was laying in my bed when I was 21 years old and ready to go to sleep, and the brightest light that I've ever experienced in my life came into my room, and being this hood guy, scared to death, I did what came naturally, pulled the covers over my head. And the Lord showed me, it was almost like the Christmas Carol, showed me different aspects of my life. And he took me to the year 2000 and showed me a man laying in a casket. And I looked at that man and I said, if me preaching your word is going to cause me to wind up in this casket, I definitely don't want to do it. And I said, and I saw what they did to my grandfather. I never want to do this. And he said, preach my word. And I ran as far away from what he showed me that day. And it was so clear because he showed me the year 2000, showed this person that looked like me in this casket. And I said, there is no way. If it's going to cause me to die, no. And I began to run from that vision and shared it with no one. In November of '99, my dad came to me and my sisters and told us that he had cancer, that it was stage 4, but he was going to fight it with all that was in him. And from that point in time, '99, I watched my father die or begin to get sick and watch him deteriorate. In April of 2000, I was at a meeting and my mother called me and said that my grandmother had cancer. And my wife at the time asked me for a divorce. So my entire world was collapsing around me. And I was like, Lord, what did I do to deserve this? And it seemed like everything was just gonna just fall apart. So my dad died in September or October 1st of 2000. And I was like, wow, my dad's dying. My grandmother fortunately recovered and was healed from the cancer that she had. And went to my dad's funeral. And just as I saw when I was 21 years old, the man that I saw was my father. Gave my life to Christ the next month. And April, Good Friday service of 2001, I sat in the pews at Omega Baptist Church where I'd given my life to Christ. And Bishop Finney asked me to come up so that he could lay hands on me. And I was one of those folks that I'm like, this guy's pushing people when they fall out in the spirit. I don't believe in all this stuff. They're speaking in tongues, and this is some foolishness. and plus I was still kind of like teetering in the world. And he laid hands on me, and I felt the Holy Spirit come over me, and I fell back, and it was almost like a Matrix experience. I'm like, what is going on? I have no control of my body. And I fell out. And after the Holy Spirit did whatever the Holy Spirit did that day, I got up and I looked around and I said, he didn't tell anything about my life, so I'm cool. All my secrets are still mine. And I went back to my seat, and Bishop Finney pointed to me. I was the last person that he laid hands on that Good Friday service. He pointed to me and he said, should I tell him? And I'm like, oh my God, tell me what? And he called two women up that had the gift of prophecy. And he said, you have been running from your calling for a long time. And you were supposed to preach God's word several years ago, but you've run from it. And with his hand up to the Lord, he was saying this. And I'm like, oh my God. But as he began to speak it, the weight that had been holding me back was lifted off my shoulders. And people say I jumped until my head almost hit the ceiling. And I finally accepted it. And once again, I never sought to be a minister. But even how I came here is truly of God. Because Bishop would say that you're going to be leaving soon. He would tell me that I was going to go and pastor. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But one March of '09, the Lord told me, he said, I'm about to move you. And I went to my wife and I said, the Lord said he's about to move us. And I was like, I don't want this. But he said specifically, I'm going to move you by June.
Wow.
And I was like, this is some craziness. Because, when people say God talks to them, I used to be like, you're a nutcase. But he said, I'm going to move you by June. And I was like, how? I'm not sending my resume out to anybody. I don't know what you're talking about.
Where were you at that time?
I was at Omega Baptist Church as an associate. And Bishop would always say, you need to send your resume out. And I was like, okay. But I said, if God want me to be a minister, it's going to have to be an act of God that has me to become a minister. Because I'm not anybody's minister. I mean, I need ministering too. But the one thing that I asked God, I said, Lord, if you were going to move me, give me a pastor's heart. Because I'm an introvert by nature. I don't like people. But I asked the Lord to change my heart. And he moved. I got a call on the Thursday before Mother's Day of 2009 from DeWitt Chappelle, the pastor of Everlasting Baptist Church. And he said, Reverend Braxton, there's a church. They've been hurt, and they need someone to just come and minister to them and speak to their hearts. And I asked him, what's the name of the church? He said, New Life Cathedral. And I said, well, who was the pastor there? And he told me, and I was like, whoa.
Who was it?
Artis Caver was the pastor there, but he was incarcerated. And the church was really in a wilderness time for 6 years. And I had heard the stories, had seen the reports that were on the news, and I'm like, oh my God, Lord, why would you send me? I mean, if you're going to send me to a place, why would you send me there? And I said, let me pray about it, and I'll get back with you. The next day I called him and said, I'll go, because the Lord had said, go. And he said, don't ask anyone anything. If there's anything that I want to tell you, I'll reveal to you. And the rest is history. We came there Mother's Day of 2009, and in October of 2009, the Lord said he was going to give the church a place that they would be able to have free worship. We didn't have any money, and I was not even the pastor at the time. And when he gave the vision, he showed me this amazing building. And voila.
And when I drove in today, I think I told you when we were in the office, I said, you've certainly brought life to this building, because there's just people everywhere doing all kinds of things here, and it's really amazing.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing.
It's truly an act of God. We wrote a vision for what we wanted to do before we had a building. We were still meeting in the Kinsman Party Center. And January 10th, I became pastor of the church. January 12th, we had the very first church meeting that the church had ever had. And the Lord gave me the vision that he wanted for our church to have. He wanted us to have education. He wanted us to be able to deal with people in their needs. So from a substance abuse and drug abuse standpoint, he wanted us to have housing-related programs and be a resource to the community and truly impact the community. So we wrote the vision. He had all of the ministries that we wanted to offer: singles ministry, marital ministries, and youth ministry. And we wrote the vision. Habakkuk 2:2 says, write the vision, make it plain, and men will run to it. The next month, he gave us this building.
So where were you meeting?
The Kinsman Party Center.
Kinsman Party Center.
And when we acquired this property, there were 4 other churches that were in the bidding. They had more money than we had. They had more of a history than we had. But I asked the folks that were over or presiding over the decision on selling the church to us, and I said, what was it that made you sell us this church? And they said, it was your vision. Yeah. And this became a field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. We have never put a sign up advertising that we were renting space. This is 36,000 square feet of space. And we only have 2 rooms that are unoccupied in the whole building.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
To God be the glory.
And that was what year you moved in this building?
We moved in 2010, February 28th, the last day of Black History Month. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and we asked the presbytery, could we take it for a test drive before we moved in?
Mm-hmm.
And we came in that day and we never left.
Loved it.
Yeah.
You know, this was where when you walked in the door, you just felt like.
Yeah. We had free worship. God promised us he would give us a place for free worship.
Oh, my goodness.
We need to take a pause.
That is quite a story. And truly I can see how God has worked through your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly amazing and inspiring, I'm sure, for all of those who will hear it.
Well, just imagine living it.
Tell me about your family. Tell me about your family.
I have a beautiful wife, and I get my children numbers mixed up. I have 3 children, but my nephew I raised as well. So I have 4 children. My oldest daughter's 26. My nephew that we raised is 25, and then 17 and 18-year-old. And wonderful children.
Now, I didn't hear, you have sisters, you have two sisters
I actually have two sisters and two brothers.
and two brothers.
Hmm.
I see.
And
Are
I'm the
they,
oldest of all of my siblings.
wow.
Yeah.
So are they still in the Cleveland area?
Uh, my brothers don't live in Cleveland. I have a brother in St. Louis and a brother in Atlanta, and my sisters are here in Cleveland,
That's
the Cleveland
nice.
area. Yeah.
Yeah. So family seems to be like front and center in your life.
Used to be before I started pastoring.
Well,
Now I've been blessed with a new family.
I was going to say, the family just grew a little
Yeah.
bit.
So I with pastoring responsibilities, I don't get to see my family as much as I'd like. But we grew up very close knit. We had holidays, all of the holidays we spent together, laughing and eating and typical African American family lifestyle, just having a great time together. We're very close knit.
That's good. That's good. So tell us now. I think I heard a little bit about you being an entrepreneur and writing the vision. That's really significant. What is that Bible passage?
Habakkuk 2:2.
Habakkuk 2.
Write the vision, make it plain, and men will run to it.
Wow. And that's what you did.
That's right.
And that vision was born out of this entrepreneurial spirit. So who in the family is an entrepreneur besides you?
Me.
Just you?
Yeah, I've always been a dreamer. I've always been the
oldest sibling.
been the one to take risks. I'm a risk taker. I'm the individual that will kind of put things on the line to make it happen. I believe that I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. Take the limits off of stuff. So that's been me pretty much my whole life.
So did you have any of your businesses going before coming into the ministry?
Yeah, my business, I started my business in 2004.
Okay.
So about 5 years before I actually became, moving to the pastorate role. But I was actually a minister prior to then. But it's a difference in being a minister and being a pastor.
Because you were a minister.
I was an associate at Omega.
Right.
Yeah.
And so your responsibilities weren't nearly as great.
Nowhere near.
So what was the business that you had?
I own a company called Braxton Educational and Technology Consulting. And we do professional development and training, as well as we're resellers of hardware and software or any electronics or technologies that nonprofits as well as school districts would use. So our customer base is specifically schools and nonprofit and governmental agencies.
And so was that a really booming business for you?
Oh yeah, it was great until I became a pastor.
That's what I was going to say. How do you balance that?
It's impossible to balance because my responsibilities here at the church
Have grown.
take up tremendous amount of my time, and the demands and the ask that people will sometimes ask, and that social responsibility that I feel, and that tug has truly caused my business to kind of be on the back burner. And I hate it because I love children and I love technology. So I would truly like to begin to impact our youth a little bit more.
But I see that around the church. You've brought that to the church, though.
But it's a difference when you're directing and you're the director of the script versus bringing other folks in to be the director.
Yeah, but I think because of that savviness that you have, I think that you would not have known who to bring, and you would not have been able to incorporate it. Just case in point, when I was standing in the front office and the screen to view who's at the door and how the doorbells work and how all of that technology comes together. I mean, it's apparent that that's who you are and that's what you bring to the church. You might not be front and center with it, but it's clear that it's here and that this church congregation in the building and all of its inhabitants benefit from that side of you.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They definitely benefit. you might, and so, God might just be moving you over a little bit, but saying take the knowledge with you.
Yeah, yeah. But once again, it's still a big difference when you can begin to see the true impact on what you've been able to do. I mean, we at our peak, we were in close to 30 school districts throughout the state of Ohio. We managed Warrensville Heights Alternative School. So when you can see the impact of your work.
And so what was it bringing the technology in?
Yeah, we actually at one time, we for 2 years, we managed Warrensville Heights Alternative School. So they would send their kids to the school that we managed, and we would provide them their instruction, and the school district would provide them their diploma at the end of that training. In fact, one of the young people, and he's become one of my sons as well, one of the young people, and I always tell his story because the first year that he was in our program, he worked for me one summer and I fired him because he was never on time. He wore inappropriate clothes to work. And I said, I love you, but I'm firing you. And I said, I'll see you next year. Hope you have a wonderful summer. He's like, Mr. Braxton, you're going to fire me? I was like, yeah, that's the only way you're going to learn. So in the fall, he came back to the school, shirt and tie, no longer sagging. And he said, if I come to school every day, will you buy me a cardigan? And I was like, yeah, if you come to school every day, I'll buy you a cardigan. So when the sweater season came around, I made sure I stuck to my word, got him that cardigan. And then he said, do you have a job for me this summer? I said, if you prove that you're going to come to school, do what you're supposed to do, there's a job for you next summer. Hired him the next summer, and we actually did the program here at the church. And he was our best worker. But one day he came to work, and this was the most powerful thing that ever happened. When he came to work, he said, I want you to baptize me. And I could have lost it. That this young man went from being a high school student that would have never graduated. But he wrote my wife and I a card, and he said, you're the closest thing to parents that I've ever had. And that you show me what a real man is supposed to be. And your wife shows me what I need to find in a kingdom woman. And that was just like, so I baptized him.
Oh, my goodness.
And he's now one of our most faithful members of the church, working with our youth ministry and our evangelism team. And he graduated from high school and is now in college. Yeah.
How wonderful. So you have a real teammate in your wife. She just kind of works right along with you.
Oh, yeah. She is the true definition of helpmate.
That's right.
Because and she will tell you that I'm the visionary. I don't know how God gives me vision. I don't know how we're going to get there. But I come in and pour that vision out to our leaders, and especially my wife. And my wife gets everybody around who can direct, and she directs and makes sure that it happens. So that's why, I mean, even when you just look around our building, my office and all of the beautiful furniture, and that's my wife, curtains. The front office with the purple accent wall, that's my wife.
That's a wonderful thing.
Even in our cafe area, she picked out the furniture and all of the accents and all of that.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
To have somebody by your side and to model that kind of interaction for the whole church, and certainly for your children and for the young man that you were telling us about, but then you model it for just hundreds of people. You walk your talk.
Yeah, and here at our church, we're different from a lot of churches because we have a high number of married couples. We probably have about 30 to 40 married couples in our congregation, maybe more than that.
What's the how many are in your congregation?
We don't count.
Okay.
We have a packed house on Sunday.
Yeah.
And maybe this is me overthinking things, but God told David not to count his people.
Really?
And not to take a census, and David was disobedient, and God, he had to repent for being disobedient. But that was one of the things that led to God telling him, one, because he had too much blood on his hands, but also because he told him not to count his people. They weren't his, they belonged to God. So our folks belong to God, so I don't count.
Okay. Okay. So now you're in East Cleveland, Pastor Braxton.
Mm.
This is a whole different experience for you too. Although you were close by before, did you notice East Cleveland
Well,
before?
I actually worked in East Cleveland. I worked at Prospect Elementary School for 3 years prior to actually becoming pastor of this church. So uh, that was my first experience in working in East Cleveland on a day-to-day basis, and I loved it. The young people that I had an opportunity to work with and kind of mentor along were great. I also did tutoring. My company did tutoring in East Cleveland for about 6 years. We worked in all of the schools. Have been a part of the African American Achievement Gap program over at Shaw. Did some work in Heritage, so had a great deal of experience working in East Cleveland schools. But as a young person, East Cleveland was that place that you knew that you wouldn't drive in with a loud car or with your tail light or headlight out, because you know that the police in East Cleveland didn't play. So, and remember coming as a teenager to my aunt's job when she worked at Mr. Hero. That was right down the street. And always the landmark that everyone knows is Angelo Pizza. So we knew that at some point in time that you were going to get an Angelo Pizza for the family. So those were those early memories of the city of East Cleveland.
Well, good memories.
Yeah.
Good memories. And how did it look then? How,
East Cleveland was one of the cleanest cities in growing up. They didn't have a lot of the trash, and people took very good care of their properties. The and it was a city that was well kept. One of the things that I think where we really, or East Cleveland experienced its downfall, and most urban communities experienced its downfall, was with the late 80s drug era.
So, did you hear about it, or did you experience it? Did you see it?
Well, drugs?
I mean, yeah.
Oh.
People.
Oh, I lived it. Everyone that was in my age group in the late 80s, that's when I just came into being a man. So, in those are late 80s, that's when the drug trade, or the drug game as we called it, when it was at its height, and it destroyed every African American community.
Was that the crack?
Yeah, 'cause that was a crack era. So it destroyed, and you can see how it's been like a bomb has been dropped on our communities, because for a young black male, we grew up thinking that there was no other occupation that we could do that we could make as much money as you could. And you heard the stories of folks making $1,000 a day. You saw the lavish cars that folks drove, the clothing that they wore, and all of the trappings that came along with it.
So, and even it infiltrated East Cleveland with the strict policing that they had?
Oh, for sure. Because that's when financially, those were the Reagan years. So to African American communities, it began to affect us with some of the government jobs. The car industry had began to die down because, the United States automakers, they made the 3-year cars that would only last about 3 years, and that's when Toyota came on the scene. I mean, we had hit a tipping point. Toyota and Honda had come on the scene. They had began to make reliable cars. So many of our folks that worked in those reliable industries, GM or Ford or Chrysler, that's when they began to do some of the layoffs and cutbacks. Right down the street, we had Fisher Body. Fisher Body closed. So our communities hit a tipping point of those reliable jobs. We had began to import foreign steel. So a lot of our folks that worked in steel mills, they no longer had a job. So our viable form of income became selling drugs.
So you saw it. You saw the tipping point.
Oh, for sure.
You saw the tipping point. And I always say that there's layers. We just don't have these communities look like this just because we were lazy or whatever. There's layers of it.
Well, it was intentional, I mean, from my standpoint, because uh, you cut back on some of the recreation-related activities that used to be a part of the neighborhoods that I grew up in. I mean, the swimming pools were always open in the summer, and when I grew up, there were always recreational activities. Uh, in the late '80s, they began to cut some of those recreational activities under the Reagan and then Bush years, and then do away with some of the summer job opportunities. So a lot of the teenagers that would have gone and worked with the summer youth employment program no longer had those opportunities. So that's why I say, I mean, some folks will disagree and say that it was intentional, but if you look at some of the data relative to the Iran-Contra scandal and some of the things that they did in LA and the emergence of gangs and what they would do in relation to the distribution channels that they set up between Nicaragua and Panama, you can see the fingerprints all over the fact that drugs were flowing into our communities. And as some folks will say, I don't know any black folks that have jets or planes to fly drugs in and out of the United States.
So it was intentional.
It is my belief that it was
And
intentional.
so then once that family unit starts breaking down and the people start to lose their way.
And once people, I mean, lose the ability to have a sustainable wage, and this is what we saw, because Ford was no longer their GM, and some of those companies that were able to feed off of those automakers, once they were no longer available, people began to become discouraged, and that began to cause drug use. But at the same time, for young African American males, they saw it as a way to make a come up, and to the point where even the smartest of us saw it as opportunities. So I mean, I had my little time where I got involved in trafficking, and it was my younger family members that got me involved.
Really?
Yeah.
Of your siblings or just cousins?
My brother and then my younger cousins.
Wow.
And that's what prompted me, one of the other reasons that prompted me to go to college, because I was either going to die or go to jail. And it took me to get robbed at gunpoint. I never had a gun pulled on me, but got robbed at gunpoint and was dealing with my reckless family members that drew police attention to our operation. So I said, I got to get out of here.
Wow. So that was like your wake-up call. You just...
It was I got to get away. I don't know if it was a wake-up call, but it was like, okay, these Negroes are going to have me locked up.
Okay.
And soon after I went away to school, everyone in our network got locked up. Yeah. So one of the guys got kingpin status. He got 28 years. One of my cousins got 14 years, and another one got 12 years.
So if you're away at college, how do you process that? I mean, you know you got away, and that's what you're supposed to do, but then you're thinking like, wow, how did all of this roll out like this? I
You
mean,
say it
you
could
had
have
a
been
lot.
me.
Yeah, it could have been me.
Yeah.
And these are people that are near and dear to you. Really, you've grown up with. They're your family members and everything. And so they're being sent away. Just knowing that has to be really...
But you become desensitized to it because that was just the way that it was. I mean, our brothers
so many were going away.
were in and out of jail. I mean, the or the high school president of the senior class the year prior to me has been in and out of jail his whole adult life. So it was catching everyone. The captain of the football team is now in jail for doing human trafficking. So he was a pimp, has been in the videos with 50 Cent, and we lived right around the corner from him. I had to play football every morning. The last time I saw him, we were at the gym because we worked out at the same gym, and he was like, "Brax, what are you doing now?" And I said, "I'm pastoring." He's like, "Oh, that's what's up. That's the real pimping." It was like, "Negro, get away from me." I mean, but those are the types of things that growing up in urban area and seeing the urban sprawl, that you really don't realize that our children are living with post-traumatic stress disorder or syndrome. My wife and I, when we first purchased our home in South Euclid, the first night that we were in the house, it was a June night, warm summer night, had the windows open. And the first night in the house, I said, "Baby, do you hear that?" And she said, "What?" And I said, "Nothing." It was the first time in my life that I had ever opened up the window and not heard someone screaming, shooting, helicopter flying over my head.
Really?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So you had a lot to process in your young years.
Yeah. And I'm a good kid. So just imagine what our kids today are processing.
Yeah. So that gives you the insight.
Yeah.
That gives you the insight.
And the ability to empathize with
Yeah.
what they're going through.
Yeah.
Because I've seen it all.
And it helps you to know how to set your programs up. You know what's
Yeah.
needed.
Yeah. But it really makes you sensitive to what people are going through because, and this is my last, share in relation to stories of my past. In kindergarten, was chased home by a man that had been shot in the head, and literally chased home. We were on, my aunt and I were on our way to school because I have an aunt that's 4 years older than me, and it was a winter day, and we were walking to school, and this man with a ski mask on, with blood profusely shooting out of his head, chased us back to my grandmother's doorway, and we watched this man die in our next door neighbor's yard. He had just robbed the liquor store around the corner from our house.
So was he really chasing you, or he was?
I have no idea. From my vantage point, he was.
He was chasing you. He was trying to get away, though.
From my vantage point, he was chasing me.
Wow, and you watched him die.
Yeah, yeah. So, but I say that to say this, I mean, I was able to heal from things like that, but we have kids that
need a lot of healing.
That are, and you become once again desensitized to life and death because you hear it so much. I mean, when you live in an urban area like Glenville right now, the Glenville community, from September to now, there have been over 200 shootings in the Glenville community. If I'd never seen anyone else shot, but it was nothing for me to hear gunshots every night in the community that I lived in. So what are our children going through today? And I can now live in South Euclid and open my window and not hear anything because I had the resources to move out.
Right. So it sounds like you've kind of made it a personal goal to give other people the same resources and opportunities. That's part of your giving back.
It's not only to change or to have them move out, because I believe that we have to change the communities that we live in to not make that an acceptable practice. But one of the things that I teach here at New Life is that hurt people hurt people. When people are hurting, they want to inflict that pain that they're feeling onto somebody else. It's like cutters, people that cut themselves. It becomes a sedative and a soothing feeling that they have that releases the chemicals in their brain when they can hurt somebody else.
Yeah.
So we have to change the psyche and begin to show people that we need to love one another versus hurting one another. And that's a process, because if the only thing that you've ever heard your mother tell you is that you're no good and that you're stupid and you're just like your sorry daddy, which many of our kids are going through, or they've never had a hug and mama never told them that they love them, we have to change that.
Wow. So how I understand we have to change it. What are you doing directly that reflects that change that needs to happen?
Well, first and foremost, when folks come on our grounds, we try to create an environment of love We tell folks that we want to love you from the parking lot to the pulpit, and begin to let people experience what love is, that agape love, unconditional, not based on what someone has done for you, but just based on the fact that we serve a loving God. Uh,
You know, I have to just interject there, but waiting in the lobby for you today, I felt that as people came, passed through, coming and going, and some speaking to you, some you weren't there. You know,
mhm,
I felt they were expressing, they were greeting me with, you know, sometimes you can sit in a place and people will just walk right past you and
mhm,
won't say anything, but you know, I could feel the love.
yeah,
I could feel the love.
and that's, every member uh, that's our mantra. Love people.
Mm-hmm.
We don't care what you've been through, what you're going through, how you look, how you're dressed. People need to know that somebody loves them, because if God loved you and brought you out of whatever it is that you've gone through, you need to share that love with someone else. So that's one thing, but I believe that we have to go a little bit further, and also meeting individuals' needs. And one of the things, my assistant is the resource queen, and we try and develop a resource navigation system where we can point people into the direction of assistance for whatever that need might be. So if we need temporary housing for someone, we know who to call to get temporary housing. If it's someone that's struggling with alcohol, we have members of our church that were a part of the Alcoholic Anonymous groups that were meeting here that have now joined our church. So we can now say, okay, we have a first name relationship with individuals that can now point people to sponsors. We have a program that meets here called Miracles that helps people with drug addiction. So whatever that need is.
I hear daycare out there.
Yeah, so we have the daycare center. For one of the things that we wanted to do was with nutrition. So the WIC programs deals with nutrition.
And I heard you talk about tutoring.
Yeah, so we've done educational programming here. So you name it, we've tried to put those resources in place. The next phase of what we're trying to do is we've started a community development center called Possess the Land Development Corporation. And as a part of that, we want to begin to look at doing housing, but we also want to do job training, because what's the sense in giving someone a house if they don't have the money to stay in that house? And our approach, we want to be different, because we want to not put them in debt again and put them in a loan where they're now indebted to a bank that will foreclose on them or put them out if they can't meet that financial obligation. But we want to be a self-sustaining and self-funding agency where we can be able to cover the payments for the relationship of them living in that house. We don't want to do it with bank funding.
Mm. So that will come out of the Development Corporation?
Correct. Similar to what the Cleveland Neighborhood Housing Network does.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's good.
Where it's self-funded.
Now, is your focus East Cleveland or everywhere?
Well, our main focus is East Cleveland. First and foremost, there are like 4 houses that are across the street from our church. We want to get those houses to start out. And we want to put folks that are either in some type of relationship with our church in those houses, or even our members, because we want it to be a community where people live in close proximity to their house. But also, it changes the community where our church is located when people live by their church. And they begin to share those values that we're teaching here with the rest of the community.
How have the surrounding institutions and cities impacted East Cleveland, do you feel, in all of this navigation that you're doing? I'm sure that you've encountered surrounding institutions, and how do you feel like they're helping East Cleveland?
There's some institutions that are helping East Cleveland tremendously, but there's some institutions that have disinvested in the city, without naming them. Yeah.
Okay.
But there's some that have truly said that they want to make a commitment to be here, but you can truly see those institutions that have made a disinvestment. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, we have to come together to begin to show those folks that have disinvested that there's something worth investing in here. I believe that people in our community have become so disenchanted that, and in many instances, haven't dealt with that post-traumatic stress disorder that they're going through, that they're not truly showing who they are. And we need to begin to provide some mental health as well as some relief to be able to provide for themselves, that they might be able to put their best foot forward. Uh,
And when you say mental health, define that for me.
well, a
Mental
lot of our
health.
folks are dealing with depression.
Uh-huh.
A lot of folks are dealing with past hurts and past pain, and there needs to be a healing. So, from a mental health standpoint, some people need some counseling, and just being honest, some people need some medication. And being unemployed or underemployed, a lot of people don't have health care, so they don't have the ability to get the medication to deal with the chemical imbalances that they might have, or to deal with the depression that they might be going through at just this point in their lives. And the other aspect of it, that's where we play a role as clergy, where we can provide the spiritual aspects of it to help them heal.
Critical piece.
Yeah,
Can't have it. It's the holistic approach.
yeah. But we as clergy also have to realize that some people need medication.
Yeah.
I would not say, well, no, nobody needs medication. If I'm on medication for the high blood pressure that I'm dealing with from hereditary related things, no matter how much I work out, I still have to take medication.
Mm-hmm.
There's some folks that, from a cognition standpoint, they need medication to balance the chemical imbalances that they have in their bodies.
Well, as we talk about medication and working out and things like that, speak a little bit about the program, the health program that you have going on now. So you truly, when you speak about nutrition and helping people, you go in the whole gambit. As I heard you share when we were in the lobby, there's a dietary program that you've engaged
Well,
with.
we don't necessarily call it a dietary program. We're right now on a Daniel fast.
Okay.
And if in the book of Daniel, Daniel actually, when they first come into captivity in Babylon, rather than eating the dietary standards of the Babylonian people, they asked if they could just eat fruit, vegetables, and drink water when they come in. And the person that was their overseer said that I'll give you 10 days, and if you don't look right, if you don't look like you've been sustained, after those 10 days, you're going to have to eat what I give you. But Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, or who we know as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they're slave names. I tell our folks, we're not calling them by their slave names. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, they ate the vegetables and the fruit and drank the water, and they looked better than everyone else. So with all of the health issues that we're dealing with, one, this is in many instances the very first time many people have gone on a vegetable diet, and it has been tremendous for our folks. But we're doing it from the spiritual connection that we're able to establish with one another, as well as to be able to establish the relationship that we need to with God, especially during this Lent season that we're now in up until our Holy Week.
Outstanding. So, do you think, I hear all the things that you're doing in the church, I hear the things that you do to invite the community in to become healed from a spiritual and a physical and a resourceful perspective. And certainly you've watched some changes happening in the city. Can you speak on that for us? What do you think is going on now? Where are we in this city, and where do you think it's going?
Well, wow, that's a loaded question.
I didn't mean for it to be loaded.
Wow.
But I mean, you.
Where are we right now?
Yeah.
The city is at the brink. And when I say we're at the brink of either going up or going further down. And it's really hard to understand how we could even go even further down. The case in point is I was at a meeting the other day, and they had indicated that, no, can we stop it?
Converted to another meeting. Give us an example of another meeting.
So in some of the meetings that I'm
Okay,
in,
hold on. Okay, go.
I see that East Cleveland has an opportunity to either go up or down. One, from the standpoint that with all of the political gridlock that is in place and the infighting between the mayor and council, there are a lot of developers that won't take the risk of coming to a city that they might run into some political infighting that might cause their project not to move forward. And then the other thing, now with the safety forces being cut in the city, there are a lot of people that will say, I'm not moving to a city where you only have 4 police officers riding the streets at any given time. The one thing that I saw differently when we were working in the schools and they had financial difficulties, when they did only have 4 police officers at other times, is that crime ran rampant. The one thing that I could say that I see positively now, when we've had the protection that we need and we have a mayor that has begun to build bridges outside of our city, it bodes well for future development. I don't think in the past, and not to put any mayor down that has been here in the past, I don't think they made a real effort to work with the power brokers or had the relationships and the connections with the power brokers in our area to make things happen.
So that's a critical piece, right? Having
Very critical.
strategic alliances, is that what we would
Correct.
call them? And to build those strategic, you can't do it just from within.
Correct.
Is that?
That's
what I hear you
correct.
say?
And the wonderful thing, just in some of the circles that I have the great fortune of traveling in, I hear what's being done and what's not being done, and it's sad because how do you sit next door to an economic engine like University Circle Inc. and not be able to partake in some of the opportunities other than the $5 million development on Circle East? We should be more involved in business arrangements. And in fact, I had talked to a developer a few years ago when we first came into the city, because my thought was it makes no sense that there's no grocery store in the city of East Cleveland that is more of an upscale style grocery store that is not selling bad meat or falling into or continuing the produce desert that we now have here in the city. So my question was, why can't we work out a relationship with the Daves? Dave's is on Lakeshore, Dave's is in Payne, Dave's is on West 25th in Cleveland. Why can't we work out a relationship with Dave's and show them the benefit of being in a city like East Cleveland, especially considering the close proximity to Case Western Reserve? Or why can't we open our own grocery store?
Have you posed this question to?
I posed it to this developer,
Okay.
and they thought it was a great idea. And my thought was that on that West End, if a developer came in, is to almost create like gated properties where there's streets that are almost totally vacant. If you could acquire all of the properties, make it like a gated community, and if you get enough properties over there, put your own police force or security force in place to reinforce that security. And put in video surveillance to make sure that you would be able to track whatever's coming in that community. And they were like, wow, this is a great idea. And I began to share with them, I'm like, you're in close proximity to one of the largest employers in the state of Ohio in Cleveland Clinic, another large employer in University Hospital, Case Western Reserve, and then you're also in close proximity to the VA. So you're in this whole medical space where you could, and then you're right by the art zone.
So would that be more or less like a gentrification move?
Not necessarily a gentrification move, but when you already have areas that are war zones, where it looks like somebody just dropped a bomb on them and there's no life there, It would be bringing individuals to the community that would begin to restore and rebuild this community, where you're not just having a population of individuals in some instances that are below the poverty line. And I think that that only adds, not necessarily displace. The areas that I'm talking about are already areas that there's no life. If you go to certain parts of East Cleveland, especially in the First and Second Street area, there's nothing over there.
So then all the worries about gentrification, if you built up that part, at least that would add to the city's income tax base.
Correct.
It
And
would start bringing life back into it without displacing people. So
correct.
then,
And but also here's the thing that I believe: iron sharpeneth iron. If you have people that are going to positively affect our population, and they're just not seeing people that are just negative, or people that bring, we can have a cultural exchange where we are allowing folks to begin to operate and interact with people from other cultures. Because even for myself, living in the Glenville area and going to Collinwood High School, it became all black. And when I went away to college, my first college experience was at Cleveland State University. I'd never been around white people. So it was a culture shock for me in many instances to have to interact with white folks, because it was like, I'm used to being around black people, even though my black people told me I talk white. But I think our folks need experiences, and not just from the standpoint of supervisor employee cultural relationships, but more so we live in a community where we have other cultures here. We live in a community that is representative of the city that we live in. Yeah. And there's some folks that will argue, well, we want to keep this a chocolate city. I mean, but that's fine. But we still need to have chocolate folks that are from other socioeconomic areas,
right.
not just poor black folks or black folks that are living below the poverty level.
I think there's been studies and some models done through the years where you start to integrate the communities and you put people, you mix up the economic background of people, and it starts to, the people that are doing well kind of inspire the people that are not doing well. So it helps to raise up the whole consciousness of the people in the community.
But my thing, and that's why I called it a cultural exchange. I believe that we need to begin to break down the barriers of not understanding each other.
Okay.
A lot of times we don't understand each other. We don't know how to interact with one another, and we just accept the fact that we're different. And different from the standpoint, let me stay my segregated self over here. I went to a meeting yesterday. All of the white people sat together and all of the black people sat together, and I sat by myself. It's like, this is crazy. We are in the year 2013, and we don't know how to interact with one another. Whites, black, Latinos, and I am the type of person, I'll go and talk to anyone. And it's because of the experiences that I've had.
Right.
There are a lot of folks that are in our community that have not had an experience out of talking to somebody black.
Yeah. So it helps to build a comfort level. There's a lot to be shared, a lot of richness to be realized.
And there are a lot of things that we are just not being exposed to because of our lack of, it's a lot of things that we're not learning because of our lack of exposure.
Well, we talked about strategic alliances outside of the city because you can't just build it from within. So this really sounds like another situation where you just can't build it from within. You have to start expanding your consciousness and your relationships.
Yeah, because
just community relationships.
Yeah, and just building on our cultural competencies. One of the things that we can't relate to now is even the struggle that our Latino brothers and sisters are going through with the immigration and the whole area with illegal immigration. On Martin Luther King Day, I went and spoke to group of Latinos out in Lorraine because they wanted to hear about Dr. King and the commonality in our struggle. And just in expressing what we have gone through as African Americans and the things that they go through as Latinos, the struggle is very similar. But if we don't have that dialogue, if you're living out in Lorraine and I'm living in Cleveland and we never cross the Cuyahoga River to dialogue with each other, we stay in our box.
So, your vision for the city would be to grow in a number of ways, and with growth comes some changes, and these are the cultural differences part of the changes.
Yeah, I believe that there's some cultural differences that one, we need to educate those folks that we interact,
Diversity, I guess.
diversity, but also socioeconomic integration as well. Yeah, make that more diverse because we need to have people that have had a variety of experiences and not just opening a hair salon, barber shop, restaurant.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yes, there is something wrong with that. I mean, and when I say there's something wrong, everybody can't do it because it becomes oversaturation of that business. So that's why I say it's nothing wrong with it when there's one or two. But if the whole economy is based on service and retail, we have a problem. We have to begin to show folks that there's another way to make money. And the only way that you do that is becoming exposed to it. I mean, even the way that I came into my business, I stumbled into it. I was an educator that came across a man that owned a business, and he exposed me to educational technology. Never had a desire to go into it, didn't know that it even existed.
But if you had a closed mind, closed community, you would never have had that exposure.
Correct.
So what you're saying is exposure is critical.
Yeah, and we can't be so monolithic where it's like, okay, let's just do what we've always done. If you do what you've always done and expect a difference, you are the true definition of insanity.
Right.
So, really just giving our folks, and they're different cultures that are doing things, and different organizations and different people that are doing things that we have not had the experience of being exposed to. Right now, the renewable energies. That's something that a lot of us have not had an opportunity to become exposed to. The app development. That's something that in the technology in relation to doing applications. There are a lot of our folks that have the talent to do that kind of stuff, but we've become so consumer minded that
we own the phones, but we don't know how to make it happen.
Correct.
And we could.
Yeah.
We're just as intelligent.
Yeah. But the issue is exposure and being around other people that are ideas. We have a million ideas, but our ideas are limited to what we've been exposed to.
So I hear there's possibility of a lot of development on Euclid coming up. I know you're talking about the first two streets, but I've heard different, maybe I don't want to say rumors, but I've heard talk that they're going to redo and bring the Euclid corridor all the way up to Superior. And so what I hear you saying is, as they do that, you're advocating for different kinds of businesses to populate that area.
Yeah.
Will you sit on a committee to help that?
Well, if I'm asked. But my vision for East Cleveland is beginning to create different segments of what the areas will be designated for. I believe that our area, the area where our church is existing right now, could become a manufacturing or a business hub for businesses that would want to locate in these old industrial areas that are now existing. I mean, if we talk about the renewable energies, why not have conversations with a foreign company to come here and locate a manufacturing center for the solar panels or urban wind turbines or another emerging technology But we have to begin to have those conversations and begin to talk about ways in which we can designate certain areas for development. And areas that, based on their location, why not talk to, since we have space over in the Hayden area where RTA across the street area that is already vacant, why not designate that as an area specific to the health industries where we could do biomedical research or nanotechnology, something that would support what is taking place in the health sector.
So what do you see happening on that property where Huron Road used to be?
Well, and with the close proximity to the already existing Stephanie Tubbs Jones facility, looking at something to the medical fields, or being able to support the medical technologies or something that would already benefit from the existing markets that we now are in.
That would probably help to expand it from the medical mart out to this community.
Correct.
Yeah. Get some tie-ins.
Correct.
So what do we need to do to make that happen?
We need, one, to have the political muscle and the political will, I should say, to come to an agreement to say, let's work together to make these things happen. Because if they can create the economic climate through tax abatements, through matching funds, or through governmental relations, to say, okay, we can create the climate both on a local level, county level, and then on a state level to make it attractive to move to East Cleveland, I think that things can happen. And then once you have companies moving here, you can then create a climate for housing, either redevelopment of our current housing stock or development of new houses. And then, to me, I'd also like to look at building on our past, reaching out to the Rockefeller Foundation and some of those folks that lived on Millionaires Row to begin to recreate that passion for economic development that they had back when Rockefeller and some of the other folks were here in the area.
So maybe not the Rockefeller Foundation directly, but you would want to build those relationships with our local foundation that can reach out and make those.
Well, I would say you reach out to not only the local foundations, but also to some of the national foundations, because things started here.
But you have to have something to even have the foundation support. So it has to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, whatever the case is, make it happen. Because here's the other thing. East Cleveland, this area was originally known as the Euclid Territory. The surveyor that came to Cleveland with Moses Cleveland actually founded this area, the Euclid Territory. This church was, in 1807, was the very first church founded. Not this particular building, but the wooden or the log cabin was the very first building that was put in place here. So there are some folks that started off here that had national influences. That's why I'm saying, yes, you do local, but there are people that had that settled here very early on that are now expanded outward to other areas that I believe would have an interest in reinvesting in this area if they saw the vision. Because those folks that were originally here at the church said in the 1850s that they would no longer serve communion to man traders. And if they were compelled to do something then, I would believe that those would be some of the same tenets that they taught to their children, to go back and help somebody else. The Underground Railroad with the Shaw and McElraths ran through this building. So Shaw High School, which was Shaw College at the time, had their commencement service here. So if those people were here then, once again, I believe some of those same tenets were taught to their children. So if we can reach out to the Samuel Eddies, who Eddie Road is named after, was a member of this church. Harriet Beecher Stowe, her brother, William Beecher, was the pastor of this church in the 1850s.
My goodness, what a rich history.
Yeah. So that's why I'm saying, I understand reaching locally, but there's some national connections that we have here.
So now that has to be pulled together in some type of a document,
You
and
know, we have a document that kind of articulates all that.
what do they call it? Like a visionary plan, some type of document that points to the history
Hmm.
and what you want to do and
Hmm.
who to connect with.
Yeah.
And so you have
Yeah,
a
that's the one thing that we're in the process of doing now from a church perspective, because we're going to have a foundation day where we invite the original founders, their family members back to support the vision of what we're trying to do, because we feel that we're building on their legacy.
and you are
Yeah.
indeed you are. So that's part of the questions here. What are you doing to make East Cleveland better? So you certainly have articulated that. And it starts here and it'll spread out.
Hmm.
And as you begin to, or as you continue to serve on different committees, because you're very active in the community.
We're too active.
Tell us some of the committees you serve on.
Oh my goodness. I'm the board president for NOAH, the Northeast Ohio Alliance for Hope. I'm the president of East Cleveland Concerned Pastors, which is about 20 churches that are part of our membership that I serve as their leader. I am on the Bridges of Hope committee, which is a part of NORA, which is some the social service agencies that service youth, coming together to kind of determine what type of programming we will do with the youth in the community. I attend the East Cleveland, South Collinwood neighborhood collab meetings, and then any other meeting that I'm asked to go to represent the clergy of the community.
So you're president of the East Cleveland Concerned Pastors?
Yes.
So are you able to mobilize those pastors
Hmm.
into, are you able to create a plan on how they can be effective? They can effectively support the growth and development of the city, and instead of, in isolation, one doing this here, this congregation. So are
Well,
you,
the members that we are associated with, but I have a pretty good relationship with all of the other pastors that are not even a part of our membership as well. So, we've mobilized our efforts on issues like the urine hospital. We were called into a meeting when the mayor found out. And one of the very first things that we did, the ministers actually got together and protested. We set up a Facebook page that people were signing on to. We also did some phone banking as well, that we were calling Toby Cosgrove's office and giving his number out to our members to blow his phone line up. So we like to say that we did our part in making sure that the city was not just totally left without some type of financial support.
I think with that kind of effort put forth at the departure of Cleveland Clinic, I would think that it would give them reason to reconsider putting something else of substance here, because they know that there is a base of residents that really do care about the community, and that they would be developing in a city that.
Yeah, and I believe that a lot of the things that we've done in the past have had some traction with folks. When Cleveland Clinic first opened the Stephanie Tubbs Jones Health Center, they asked the ministers to come in and pray in the dialysis unit. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that they asked us to do is to form an ongoing relationship with them. So as they have patients, that we would put prayer lists together and receive those prayer lists and pray for them, those folks that are coming through. Yeah.
I believe that we have to really resurrect the sense of community.
Mm-hmm.
From the border to border, and make people feel a part of it, and to help them and show them how to be engaged. So are you working with NOAA as they build these
core teams?
Yeah.
Yeah. The very first meeting, the community congress, was actually held here. So we did that, and we have attend. Myself and a few other. We have some of our church members that actually do participate a little more actively than I. But we try and be as involved as much as we can.
Yeah, I can't imagine that you can do it all, but just to even encourage your flock to
Yeah.
become involved is huge. you
Yeah.
know. That's huge. Well, you've done some real growth. Thank you for sharing your story.
Oh, it's
Is
my
there something
pleasure.
that we've left out that you want to say?
I don't think so.
Is there a message? I always like to say, is there a message for the future generation that's going to be here? Is there something you want to say to them about where you are now and how you hope that this will manifest, that they'll carry on? Something I don't know. That thought just came to me. Is there a message for the future generations that are going to be picking up from you?
Well, the one thing that I just like to say, and this is what I have adopted as the thing that gets me motivated and causes me to get up every morning, is that I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. So whatever you view as being impossible, you can do it. Whatever you view as being difficult, you can make it. And whatever you view as being to the point where there's so many roadblocks that you can't accomplish it, you can accomplish it because you can do all things through Christ. And I am an example and the poster child for being able to do all things through Christ. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I am Nancy Nolan Jones, part of the Voicing in Action Committee for the Social Justice Institute, and I'm delighted to be here with Pastor Braxton at the New Life Cathedral Church that he has been pastoring now since 2009, and we thank you so much for allowing us this interview.
Oh, thank you.
Pastor Braxton, just a couple questions I have. How did you develop a love for East Cleveland?
Well, my love is for people, and I don't get necessarily focused on geography, on where those people are coming from. But one thing that I just believe that East Cleveland has so much promise, and that God sent me here to lead what I believe to be a spiritual revival for this city.
Okay. Now, I know you talked about Collinwood and the rivalry with Shaw. Did you know about East Cleveland before Collinwood, like elementary?
Yeah, I knew about Angelo Herndon, and I knew about Mr. Hero before Collinwood High School. My aunt worked at Mr. Hero, so she would come into East Cleveland. And once again, I look forward to those Fridays when we would have Angelo Herndon, because I knew we were going to smash some pizza. So that was really my understanding of East Cleveland, but also the fact that you knew couldn't drive through East Cleveland with defective auto parts because you were going to get pulled over.
Okay. Can you tell us anything about that rivalry? I know you mentioned it.
Oh, my goodness. We ignorant. It was just, if there was a football game or a basketball game, there was going to be a fight between Collinwood and and Shaw. And you just heard the stories of people getting knocked out and getting their jackets taken. And it was like gang and turf war, and just stupid. And then the other thing is, I was a ladies' man, so I loved the Shaw girls. I actually married a Shaw girl.
At this point, rivalry point, how have the schools changed with their students? Well, like Collinwood and Shaw.
Well, when we were growing up, there was school pride. I mean, like, I knew the alma mater when we had to learn the alma mater when we went to the Collinwood. So it would come on in the morning. We would sing the alma mater at school. When I went back as a consultant several years later after graduating, and the alma mater came on. The kids were doing whatever, and I started singing the alma mater. Those kids looked at me like I was nuts. But there was both school pride at Shaw and school pride at Collinwood, and you know, we repped our school, and it was like we died for that blue and gray at Collinwood, and people died for that cardinal red at Shaw, and it was stupid because we were fighting, and most of us were cousins or related some kind of way anyway.
What
But
did the student bodies look like?
uh, at Collinwood, there was black and white, but predominantly black. But the difference then was we all had the desire to graduate. It was no, you know, even though if you that's barely made it out, you were going to get out of high school, in both schools. You know, and there was instances where people, if they didn't get enough credits at Collinwood, they transferred over to Shaw because they had family member at Shaw just to finish making up those credits.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was just a different time. We had school pride as well as saw the importance of graduating.
Okay. If I could just go back into the inequality thing, how do you think inequality played a part or did play a part in East Cleveland in its
Inequality from an East Cleveland standpoint, once again, I believe came about through disinvestment because it was a chocolate city. Folks were like, you know, we're not investing any money in there. Whereas when you see other communities that are neighboring communities, you see once we began to have integration, we had white flight, and white folks said, we're taking our money out of that city. So, you know, it's not just East Cleveland. You see similar things happening in Euclid. South Euclid has kind of been buffered because they've still been able to maintain a percentage of African Americans. Cleveland Heights also. But when you see the African American migration and white flight and those numbers and population begin to change, you see significant disinvestment. And it's not that, from my standpoint, that black people don't know how to take care of things. It's just that when you've had no money come in after 20 years, it looks like you've put no money in properties. And even from the folks that own many of the properties, they're slumlords. They're still collecting a check, but they put no money back in that property. So it's made to look like black folks don't take care of anything, but it's really been disinvestment.
and just for the record, you never lived in East Cleveland, right? Or
No, never lived in East Cleveland. I would never. No,
how
no,
about
I
any
never
family?
lived in East Cleveland. I don't know. Yeah, I had an aunt that stayed in East Cleveland. She stayed over on Hastings, and oh my goodness, I remember going to pick her up to when my mom would go pick her up from work. And there's a place where now Wilson's Hot Tamale is. There used to be a donut shop, and we would go and pick her up at 6 in the morning and get those hot donuts. That was the most amazing thing in the world, to be able to get donuts that were freshly made.
City was a lot different then.
City was a lot different. So I hate to say it, that most of my fond memories was of food in East Cleveland.
Okay, Pastor, I appreciate your time. It's a great interview.
Oh, thank you.